What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here coming at y'all with a Jackson State ULM recap and the undefeated season for the Tigers and Coach Prime officially ends in Monroe, Louisiana, and it came at the hands of Louisiana Monroe's their kicker. Only 4 field goals needed to overcome the SWAC favorites right now in Jackson State. And this had so many storylines with it. One of the takeaways was Terry Bowden gets UL-Monroe's first win since November 23rd, 2019. That is 665 days since the last win for the program, in which they beat Coastal Carolina in one of their first years at the FBS level. And for Coach Prom, it's left with kind of wondering how to sort out this offensive inconsistency that we have seen now for 2 of the first 3 weeks of the season. And it also leaves Jackson State fans wondering what could have been. There were so many calls, there were so many moments in this game that if they would have went the other way, or one yard was gained here, 1 yard was gained there, the game could have been a different story. And so it's really a what if type game for Jackson State. I thought, coming into the game that Jackson State should have won this game. I had them projected to win this game in my pregame show, and I know a lot of you guys watching did as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and give you all a disclaimer. This is strictly analysis, and there will be some players being called out. There will be some units called out, but we're also going to talk about some positives. So if that is not what you want to hear, you might want to go ahead and click off, because we are going to call out the offense for the atrocious play that we saw this weekend. But let's just, I want to start off on a positive note with the defense, who I know that some people were very critical of them, but as I went back, I rewatched the game today and I went through some stats and some analytics and things. The defense did all they could, in my opinion. But the thing was that I've watched countless YouTube videos of this and countless recaps of the game. The defense, no one talked about how the defense was put into bad situations time and time again by coaching decisions from Jackson State, by the anemic offense that we saw put on the field Saturday night. I want to give y'all this. The offense put the Jackson State defense in such bad positions. Let's just start with what happened early in the game. 4th down and 2. Jackson State apparently cannot run the ball at all. They fail the 4th and 2, and it led to only a 45-yard drive to get the first field goal on the board for UL-Monroe, 3-0 lead in the first quarter. Then they stall. That ULM gets great field position, and they only gained 27 total yards on that drive to get the game to 7-6. So right now you're looking at it, they gained just over 100 total yards for 2 of their scoring drives. They were not moving the ball whatsoever. And then you look, Sanders throws his first interception of the year. They gain 14 yards and extend the lead to 12-7. They put together one singular total drive to win this game, and it was their third field goal of the game, in which I believe it was like a 60 or 70 yard drive that they had. But the other ones were set up by terrible play from the offense and a terrible decision to go for it on 4th down in the first quarter. Special teams is a problem for Jackson State. The fact you don't trust your kicker at all to even go out there and attempt a field goal says so much about what the state of the special teams unit is. And so for me, that fact, and I mentioned it when we talked about I believe it was a 4.5-star kicker, Trey Glimp, they have coming in next year. That's where he's going to offer this team a big step in these crucial games. Let's say he gets that field goal. That changes the whole, perception of the game, where you take the 3-0 lead and then ULM has to drive the length of the field to score, which I don't think they could have done. So that's just the small nuances that having a good kicker gives you. And I want to say this, the best unit on the field on Saturday night for both teams, in my opinion, was the defensive lines. Both defensive lines did an absolute great job getting to the quarterback, stopping the run, and just playing clean, effective football. And for Jackson State, 4 total sacks, and they had Rodriguez looking looking like Sam Darnold, seeing ghosts. He was uncomfortable in the pocket, and he did not attempt to pass over 10 yards because he didn't have time to, and I don't think Bowden and Rich Rodriguez trust him to push the ball down the field. Coinus Miller played outstanding. Devontae Davis played outstanding. Both of them combined for a sack and 9 tackles from the defensive line. And in my opinion, as much criticism as he got, going back and watching the game, I feel like Gaddy may have had his best game of the season. 7 total pressures. He got himself a sack, had 2 tackles. And the critical part of this defense was the loss of James Houston in the first quarter. Listen, we can sit here and argue targeting all day, but by the letter of the law, that was a targeting call. It was a good call by what the letter of the rule is now. But I do think the rule needs to be changed, and to get ejected for a bang play like that is ridiculous. But let's stop with the ref argument here. But the loss of him was huge. But guys, I want to give credit to this kid. Dalen Dunn did an outstanding job at the linebacker spot replacing him. And guys, I was checking out some of the advanced analytics, since this is the first time Jackson State played an FBS team. They offer those. Dalen Dunn was the highest graded player on Jackson State's defense this weekend. So he played outstanding. And, the only 2 things I kind of had to take away from this defense is I feel like the secondary got so much hype, but they still haven't been tested. And really and truly, outside of Nugget and outside of the freshman safety number 12, I don't think Shiloh and Holmes are on that level yet. And Shiloh was the second lowest graded player on the defensive side of the ball this weekend. And the number one thing for him is, please wrap somebody up. You cannot hit stick someone every single play, and you got juked out because you had your head down and you couldn't put your eyes on the ball carrier. That is going to cost Jackson State sooner or later if he has to make a crucial tackle to prevent a first down. Keep your head up and wrap up the ball carrier. You don't have to make a highlight play every single time. That's not going to win you games. And then CJ Holmes, man, can we get him some help on the island? He got targeted on 13 of the 31 pass attempts, and it's all due to Nugget absolutely shutting down the other side of the field. Nugget only had 1 attempt his way all night. And so CJ Holmes gets picked on, and what we see is that the secondary is very good and is really being propped up by Nugget and some of those other guys. But for me, the plan is clear. If you have a quarterback, you can attack Holmes, you can attack Shiloh deep and get behind him, put him in coverage, and that's why you can go make a play. And so for me, I found that out. But the D line and front 7 for Jackson State is easily the best in the SWAC, and I was so impressed with how they played this weekend, stopping the run and getting to the quarterback. Now, we got to get to these offensive worries, man. I want to start by saying that this game exposed major issues for Jackson State's offense, in my opinion. And if they want to win the SWAC, the offense has to be better. Because if you go out there with this offense, you're not winning anything of any value. And I want to start off by saying Shedeur Sanders is not the problem. He is, in my opinion, probably the brightest spot on this offense. He has played lights out, for 3 games. And for me, outside of him, Newman at times and Lanier at times, and then Rucker like 2 or 3 plays, those have been like the only bright spots. Everything else has just been terrible. And for me, Shedeur could be even better if his offensive coordinator would put him in position to make plays. They don't trust him to make the deep throw, and I don't know why. He only attempted 2 passes past 20 yards down the field, and one of them was for a touchdown to Lanier in one-on-one coverage. Air it out, especially after you watched ULM get absolutely torched by Will Levis in Kentucky 2 weeks ago. Why is everything being dumped underneath? I mean, he completed almost 70% of his passes for 259, a touchdown, had his first pick. But for the first time, we saw what happened when Shedeur was uncomfortable and what happens when you pressure him all game. He played well, but you could tell toward the end of the game he started getting a little jittery in the pocket, and that led to his interception that he threw late in the game, which kind of sealed the game for ULM. Like I said, 2 passes 20 yards down the field, and over half his passes were less than 10 yards down the field. You have to show some sort of intermediate to deep passing game you got to show that you can do that, or you're not going to beat some of the teams that are coming up on the schedule. Open up the offense. The offensive coordinator has to trust Shador. He's one of the, in my opinion, coming out as a recruit, was the most decorated recruit that at quarterback that's in the SWAC right now. You have to allow him to test these defenses, because the defensive tests are coming for Jackson State, and you're going to face better and better offenses as we get into the season. This vanilla offense is not going to win those games. So open up the offense, man. You got to let Shador go out and win you some of these games. Now, the rushing attack, atrocious. I don't care if you played Alabama, you should have more than 22 yards rushing if you're Jackson State. That is abysmal, atrocious, and the longest run for a running back for Jackson State was 4 yards. That is absolutely unacceptable. But the biggest issue for Jackson State for me is the offensive line. The offensive line is absolutely holding this offense back. They're making it one-dimensional, and they're going to get Shador hit repeatedly, man. This weekend, they allowed 4 sacks, 14 hurries, and 20 pressures. 4 sacks, 14 hurries, and 20 pressures. That cannot be a consistent thing. And they allowed only 22 yards rushing. That is horrible. And I was looking at Pro Football Focus's advanced analytics on offensive line grades. This was the starting five's offensive line grades, including pass blocking. Cedric Dunbar, 46.7 with a 33 pass block grade. That is unacceptable for any level of college football. Caleb Graham was the best offensive lineman overall, 61.5 overall grade with a 65.8 pass blocking grade. Vincent Sampson played fine, 59.9 overall grade with a 64.3 pass blocking grade. And then these two guys, man, have to play better. Especially, one of them was the featured guy on a whole documentary about he was one of the 12 disciples. Tony Gray, 46.1 overall blocking grade with a 43.2 pass blocking grade. For a 12 disciple, you got to put on the field better than that, man. They were getting beat time and time again, and ULM was dominating this offensive line in terms of pass rushing. And I know at times they switched it up, but there were times, and you can go check Cut Day's condensed game. There were multiple times they rushed 3 guys, and the nose tackle was beating the guard and center off the ball and getting right into Shador's face. That's a recipe for disaster. Christian Clark is going to eat that alive if you allow that to happen. You cannot have that happen, and Southern's defensive line is going to eat that up if that happens. And then Dimitri Jordan, a 44.4 overall grade. And guys, this number is a real number. And if any of you want the stats, I'll take a screenshot because just behind like a whole paywall and everything. I'll send you these grades. Dimitri Jordan had a 14 pass blocking grade. A 14. That is like a F triple quadruple minus. How in the world do you allow a 14.5 pass blocking grade? That's not even good at youth league football, man. Come on. The offensive line is holding this team back so far. They're getting Shador hit repeatedly. They're making him get out of the pocket before he needs to, and they're not paving any lanes for any sort of rushing attack, and it's making Jackson State one-dimensional. Their drag route and underneath route and kind of RPO game at times is like the extended run game, because they can't run between the tackles for anything. And off the left tackle, they had negative 2 yards rushing off the left tackle this weekend, guys. The offensive line got manhandled this weekend, and that is the main reason they lost this game. And listen, there are some dangerous D-lines coming up on the schedule. I mentioned Southern, Alabama State. Bethune has some very talented edge guys. But if the offensive line can't protect Shador and pave the way for the rushing attack, Jackson State is going to find themselves in trouble, because it's really, really going to limit the potential, regardless of how talented your weapons are on the outside. It's going to limit your potential. Shane Hooks has to play better at wide receiver, a non-factor. Outside of Lanier and Newman this weekend, I wasn't super impressed with anybody in terms of the offense, other than Shador. And, as much hate as Shador got this weekend, he's the only one on this offense living up to all the hype. The offensive line was supposed to be rebuilt all these new transfers, the chemistry. Wait till the fall. The offensive line is playing at one of the worst levels in the SWAC right now. And I don't want to hear it was an FBS game, because you could say the same thing against FAMU. You could say the same. They were not paving way. They're not paving the way for the run game in either of those games. In this game, they got exposed in the pass blocking. And yes, ULM's D-line was very, very good, but you cannot have your starting tackle have a 14 grade in terms of pass blocking for a game that you should have won, in my opinion. That's just unacceptable. But listen, the golden line here is you shouldn't panic if you're a Jackson State fan, but let's pump the brakes on. We're just going to walk through the SWAC, because there are some very talented teams you're going to have to go up against, and you are going to have to play better than you showed this weekend. The second straight week, the second time in 3 weeks that Jackson State put up 7 points for an offense. They are too talented with all the all the 3 and 4 star transfers they got at wide receiver, running back, offensive line. You're better than 7 points in 2 of your first 3 games. And I understand Jackson State moves on to face Delta State, which should be a really nice game to get back on track, find their rhythm. And we'll see what happens there. But when they get into the SWAC schedule, this offense has to prove that they can put up points, because I don't think we've seen it time and time again at the FBS level. The offense being anemic leads to the defense wearing down over the season. And then by the end of the season, they're just too tired to compete. And that's when you suffer big losses. So Jackson State, this offensive coordinator, has to find a way to open up this offense, and this offensive line has to gel quickly, or it's really, really going to limit the ceiling for Jackson State this year. But listen, it's not time to panic yet. It's 1 loss. I understand that. Let's see what they do against Delta State. It should be a great chance to get to 3-1. And then they'll move into some much tougher games coming up. And I know everyone's excited for the Alabama A&M game. I am too. But let's just see how they kind of do over these next few weeks, getting that offensive line and offense together. The defense is going to keep performing at such a high level, and I'm excited to see what their potential is. But for me, ULM, also want to mention this. They welcome the Troy Trojans next weekend at home. And if they win that game, guys, will move to 2-1 and have their first winning in-season record since 2018. So 3 seasons, man. So it'll be a huge win if they can pull that upset off next week against Troy. But guys, if you're new, hit that subscribe button, like the video, man. We'll be back later this week with some week 4 content. We got our week 3 top 10 dropping this afternoon, man. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Before the Blue Bloods, right now, we out.